Good evening. I'll call this meeting of the Cartersville City Council to order. If you'll please stand for our invocation and pledge.
Today is called the National Day of Prayer. People in many communities are praying for our common life. That is, for the well-being of individuals and for the institutions of government, education, and commerce. Let us join our prayers with so many others. Let us pray. Our Creator and Sustainer, you've blessed us with an abundance of gifts. This abundance has been received by us who live, work, learn, and play in this community. We ask for your guidance to use these gifts with thanksgiving, as stewards of the earth, and as leaders accountable to those who give us this privilege and responsibility. Give us the spirit of wisdom this day and always. Amen.
Amen.
The joyful pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's go over the roll, please.
Carrie Hodge, Ward 1.
Here.
Jay Stepp, Ward 2.
Here.
Louis Tonsmeyer, Ward 3.
Right here.
Diane Tate, Ward 5.
Here.
Taft Wren, Ward 6.
Here.
Thank you, Samantha. Our first order of business is the approval of our council meeting minutes from our April 20th meeting, I do believe. And council, you've had an opportunity to look these over and make any corrections that you deem necessary or appropriate. You may do that at this time, if there are none, a motion would be in order.
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And motion carries unanimously. This is one of those fun nights where we get to recognize jobs well done and a few proclamations and whatnot. And we're going to start off tonight with the commendation and recognition of the 2018 Teachers of the Year for the Cartersville school system. They include Lauren Robinson from Cartersville Primary, Kate DeBoard from Cartersville Elementary, Lindsay Montgomery from Cartersville Middle School, and Elizabeth Hensley from Cartersville High School. I have up here a resolution that's, I did sign these, look at there, that are all identical with the exceptions of your names. And so what I'm going to do is I'll read what each of these resolutions says, and then I'll present them to you individually down here. And as I told you ahead of time, you are certainly welcome to stay, but you're also free to move on from there. I'll give you my well wishes now. I won't be able to be with you for the luncheon next week, but I think Ms. Tate is going to be in my stead. You're going to be in my stead an awful lot next week, aren't you? Good. I'll owe you something. Do a good job.
Thank you. I will.
I'm sure you will. Each of these resolutions reads as follows. Whereas the teacher has been named Teacher of the Year for their school, their personal dedication and sincere concern for quality education has made them an asset to the school system, whereas their leadership has provided a vital service to the children of Cartersville, and whereas it is the desire of the city of Cartersville to honor this most valuable teacher, now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Cartersville that because of their dedication and excellent performance of service, that this means be taken to honor them for being selected Teacher of the Year for 2018 for their Cartersville schools. So I will start out with Miss Lauren Robinson, if you'll please meet me down front. Ms. Kate DeBoard. And Ms. Lindsay Montgomery. The next item we have is for National Safe Boating Week. And talked with Mr. George before the meeting, and he said the mayor of Kennesaw called you what? I said I can name you Admiral if you want, but we're gonna stick with Mr. George, or as you've requested. So I've got a proclamation that reads that whereas Cartersville, Georgia's unique weather and water resources offers special water-related recreational activities to its residents and people from around the world. Whereas Lake Allatoona, when full, covers more than 12,000 acres, has 270 miles of shoreline, and is one of the most visited lakes in the United States. Whereas knowing basic navigation rules and never operating a boat while under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And whereas a significant number of boaters who have lost their lives would be alive today had they worn their life jackets. We want to remind recreational boaters of safety efforts to ensure that they and their loved ones are safe and responsible on our nation's waterways. Whereas our local Ackworth Flotilla of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary conducts numerous safety patrols, boating safety and education classes, and vessel safety checks, along with providing boating safety materials to retailers and at public events. Now therefore, I, Matthew J. Santini, Mayor of the City of Cartersville, do hereby support the goals of the North American Safe Boating Campaign by proclaiming May 20th through 26th as National Safe Boating Week, and urge those who boat to wear it. Would you like to say anything on behalf of your organization? Please.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, on behalf of the United States Coast Guard and the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla 22, I wish to thank you for this proclamation and your sincere support of boating safety. Thank you.
Thank you. But wait, there's more. This is also National Historic Preservation Month, and I have a proclamation here. I'm guessing, Ms. Holt, you're here on behalf of the HPC. Thank you for that. It says, whereas historic preservation is relevant in urban, suburban, and rural communities throughout the nation, providing benefits to Americans of all ages from all walks of life and backgrounds. And whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for economic development, heritage tourism, neighborhood revitalization, fostering local pride, and maintaining overall community character while enhancing livability. And whereas the City of Cartersville is rich in historic resources, including properties in the Downtown District, Cherokee-Cassville Historic District, Ranger Hill Historic District, Old Town Historic District, and the West End Historic District. And whereas it is important to celebrate the role of history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals preserving the tangible aspects of the past that have defined and continue to define our city. Now therefore, I, Matthew J. Santini, Mayor of the City of Cartersville, do hereby proclaim May 2017 as National Historic Preservation Month, and call upon the people of Cartersville to join their fellow citizens across the United States in recognizing and participating in this observance. Would you like to come down and accept this? Reluctantly, she says yes. Mr. Grove, you have the next item, please.
Yes, Mayor. This is a resolution that's apparently been adopted by Bartow County, Floyd County, Rome, and Cave Spring. The 411 connector, which is now the Rome-Cartersville Development Quarter. This encourages construction of it. I did change a little bit from the one that was sent over by the county so that this one designates Alternative 2 is the alignment that we support, but it's something that you're being asked to do, and I recommend that you approve it.
Okay. And again, this, at least similar, if not identical, resolutions have been passed by Floyd, Rome, and Bartow governments. So it is before you for your consideration, Council.
Motion to approve.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We have a second reading of a zoning Z17-02. Mr. Menino, if you'll get us started with that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you noted, this is a second reading. A quick recap of what the request is. The property is currently zoned MU, multiple use. It's located at 640 North Tennessee Street. The zoning case from back in 2001, when it was originally zoned MU, included some conditions that precluded the development of multifamily on that particular tract. The request is to change that condition to allow multifamily. Since the first reading, there have been a few changes and additions included that should have been handed out to you prior to the meeting. Would have been a copy of a traffic analysis that was performed regarding the proposed property. Additionally, you should have a copy of a sewer capacity availability letter from the water department. And additionally, the applicant has chosen to provide a change to their application to include this as an age-restricted or 55 and older community as opposed to a straight multifamily family community. With that, the Planning Commission did recommend denial of this application, and the applicant is present for this request.
Okay, and just to be clear, though, the Planning Commission doesn't give any direction or cause for their reason for denying the claim, but for not recommending it? Or is that I'm not trying to force you to speak on their behalf, but I just want to make sure that.
Based on the public meeting, there were concerns about traffic that were discussed, and I believe it may have been mentioned that, you know, the previous condition, you know, they didn't see any reason to change the previous condition that was on the property, but traffic seemed to be the biggest discussion item, but no, there was no reason given
Okay.
for the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Menino at this point? Anyone? All right, thank you, sir. I'll open up a public hearing relative to file case Z17-012. Anybody wishing to step forward, speak for or against may do so at this time. And if you would, sir, your name and address for our clerk, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Gary Hammond with Landbridge Development. I reside at 1836 Withmere Way in Dunwoody, Georgia, and my office is in Sandy Springs, Georgia. I'll be brief. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you again. At the Planning Commission, I was asked several questions about the history of the property and the prior rezoning, and I could not answer that on behalf of the owner. The owner is here tonight. If any of you all have questions for her, she would be happy to answer those questions. Since I spoke to you guys last time, I mentioned at the end of that speech that there were three possible concerns that you might have. One was traffic, the other was the availability of sanitary sewer, and then storm sewer. I've worked hard over the last couple of weeks to try to put those issues to bed so that they no longer remain a concern for you guys. The traffic letter that was generated, hopefully you've had an opportunity to digest it, but it compared the trips that would be generated from a straight multifamily general occupancy property to other alternative uses the property could be put to, such as a convenience store or a retail center or an office building. And in general, all of the other uses are would be greater demands on traffic. There would be greater numbers of trips out of the property and greater number of trips into the property. And with this property being about 5.8 acres, I believe that the uses that they used as alternatives of 15,000 square foot retail center, 20,000 square foot office building, and a convenience store are all plausible. So I would like you to take that into account. And then the traffic engineer made a comparison about the number of trips, peak hour and per minute. And if I remember correctly, about one car would be leaving about every 2 minutes in the morning at the absolute peak hour, and one car would be entering the property at the PM peak hour about every 80 to 100 seconds. As Mr. Menino mentioned, I am asking you to approve this rezoning with me committing to build the project subject to age restriction. It would be developed under what's called housing for older persons. I sent in the definition of that in Georgia. It would be governed under Georgia law, and it's basically 55 and older with few exceptions for anybody being able to reside at the property under 55. And those were in the email that I sent. And I would like to point out that according to the traffic engineer, if the property switches to seniors, the number of trips will be about 40 to 45% of a family property. So the traffic's going to drop even more significantly. You guys saw a site plan for the proposal for family. I'll have to do some work on it. It might end up being less than 72 units, but I believe that the 3 buildings that are shown are fairly accurate in terms of how those can be connected into a senior project, which would include elevators and inter-corridor connectivity and a number of gathering spaces which are required under Georgia law. At this point in time, if we go forward, instead of having a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms for a senior property, it would be only 1 and 2 bedrooms. I probably would do about 28 ones and 44 2 bedrooms because I found that seniors still like the extra space, they like the extra bedroom. I've got 4 senior properties in my portfolio, one in Goldsboro, North Carolina, one in Holly Springs, North Carolina, one in Waynesboro, Georgia, and one in Newport News, Virginia. They've all are beautiful properties and have done very well. The rents would range about $500 to $700 a month for a 1-bedroom, about $600 to $800 a month for a 2-bedroom. There's still a market component, so at 14 would be unrestricted and anybody could live there despite income or regardless of income. But for the units that are set aside for the program, excuse me, that I described, the households would earn approximately $19,000 to $32,000 a year, and that would be based on a 1 to 2 person household, whether it's a spouse or a couple that live there. Finally, the sewer preliminary results are in. I had my civil engineer review them. I'll have the report next week, but I wanted to put something in front of you, and it looks favorable that there's capacity in the line. And I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hammond?
Mayor, I do. The changes would all still come under the GICH program. In other words, now we're looking at 55 up, which is new tonight. But that would be still, you would retain, or the developer would retain the 15-year. I mean, does everything stay the same?
Yes, ma'am. So it would, as I committed before, it would be a 20-year land use restriction on the property for affordability. And that would also apply to the 55 and older. Yes, ma'am.
Will you also be asking the city for a letter relative to the DCA program if this is approved?
Yes, and I know that there's other choices that the city will make, but yes, we are asking for that.
Okay.
Other questions or discussion?
Well, I would like to know what you mean by, you understand there are other choices, the city.
There are other projects that may be in competition with it, I think, right?
Within the city limits, Sam?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, and either project can move forward without that letter, but it does help the project that receives that
Yeah, it
letter.
helps
That's
you,
support.
right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions at this point? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'll continue the public hearing for KZ 17-02. Anybody wishing to step forward and speak for or against may do so at this time. And seeing none, I will close the public hearing for Z 17-02 and put it on the hands of council for further discussion, or again, if there's questions or comments.
I think Todd.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll reopen up that public hearing for you, Ty. And again, please, your name and your address for our clerk, please.
Ty Mitchum, 544 West Main Street, Cartersville. I represent the landowner in this transaction. One thing that, and I called and talked to Lamar, who's the chair of the planning commission, just have a conversation. This is the only thing, main point, I brought this up to Gary in an email today. From a broker's perspective, and just hear me out on this. And y'all know me, I'm a part of this community, I'm invested in so many different ways. You know, my care is quality development, but also I'm obviously trying to make a living. But when I look at this site, we have right at 5.8 acres in the city. Great location just north of Northtown. I believe it's one block out of the district, or the original plan that we did about 10 years ago. I look at the site and I said, well, if we don't go this direction, what is the end result? In MU zoning, we have these restrictions. Well, does that mean I can go and build another 1010 North Tennessee Street property? Because I believe we could do that within the zoning parameters today. I was hired, November will be 2 years ago.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Another 1010.
Yeah, I'm gonna get there.
Explain what that is.
I'm going to.
Okay, thank you.
So November will be 2 years ago, I was hired to manage and lease the shopping center where now Okinawa and Los Arcos rest. I only deal with between the two restaurants, okay? There's about 35,000 square feet of real estate between there. If anyone, you know, knows anything about traffic, anything about parking, anything about the constraints on Tennessee Street, tomorrow's Cinco de Mayo, please go up and try to go to Los Arcos tomorrow afternoon, or travel North Tennessee up in that section. My point by saying that is, if someone's unrestricted can go do that today on this site, you know, to me that negates a little bit of the traffic argument. All I'm coming at is, as a community, I mean, it's 5.8 acres in town. What do we do with the site? What do we put? Marketing moving forward, having constraints on our, you know, on the broker for the owner. I mean, who is the council going to be happy that I find, you know, that's the end user and we put there, you know? I mean, the true nature of towns today is price per acre, where these prices have gone, and y'all know this, they're crazy high. Well, it eliminates when I say affordable housing, I'm talking about a $150,000 house that the common family or single mom or single dad can afford. This is the real problem that we face every day on the front lines, is trying to, you know, because values are jumping. And so we end up with, how do we create product out there that people can really afford? And not just we use the affordable term, you know, and I know in a different way in this context, but when I look at this site, what do we do with it? And so I say all that to say that that's kind of our perspective. And I called and had a great conversation with Lamar. Lamar was not at the meeting. Lamar was out of town and went, so he did not participate in the vote. But, you know, and he had you know, and he was puzzled by it as well. He's like, well, Ty, he's like, there's 5.8 acres there. You know, what's the end goal? So, you know, when I ponder that, I just want to kind of bring that to your forefront, that things like this don't go away. I mean, we're going to have to address it sooner or later. So it's kind of like, what do you end up wanting to see there? Another Okinawa shopping center, and, you know, and 300 cars trying to squeeze in 115 parking spaces and then dumping them on Tennessee Street, or something more controlled. You know, that's kind of the thought. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Tom. We'll continue the public hearing for case Z 17-012. Anybody else wishing to step forward, speak for or against, may do so at this time. And seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and again, give it back to council for further discussion, questions relative to this case.
Mr. Archer, if in lieu of all the information that's given tonight, there's been a lot of changes, and we're just handed the information. Do we have the option of sending it back to the planning commission for review under the new requests?
Yeah.
Okay. I think my motion would be that we return this to the planning commission and let them review the changes and give us a clear opinion of how they see this as well.
Okay. All right, I've got a motion and a second. Before we vote, yes, do you have an opportunity to comment before we vote?
Mr. Archer, with, sending it back to the planning commission, can we also request that they provide, if they do, whichever way they go with it, can we request they provide an essentially an explanation or some type of reasoning with that?
No.
No, okay.
Can I speak?
Yeah, come on up here. Well, again, this is all about getting council information, so as long as we're plowing new ground, we're good.
Okay, and that's obviously a very fair request to send it back because the project's changed. I'd just like to let you know that if you do that, which is understandable, that this project will not go forward because the application date is May 25th, and the property absolutely has to be rezoned or properly zoned by May 25th. Unless there's some mechanism for specially called hearings or the calendar, we'll work out, this project will not go forward and will probably not compete very well in a future year, because part of the attraction for being in Cartersville today is because you haven't had a DCA funded community in a while. So for example, if the other applicant gets funded this year, there won't be points available for another applicant next year. It's possible that more than one application may get funded this year by DCA, but it's very unlikely that another one will get funded in a future year. So if you do send it back to Planning Commission, this project on 640 North Tennessee Street will not happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, cool. Hey, gentlemen, I'm sorry. We're in a public meeting, and so sidebars I know occasionally are fine. But if there's a question that's for the good of the group, if we can have that.
I just asked the city attorney
Sure.
if there's a way in which, if there's a date specific to when this can be done. I believe our next city council meeting will be before that date, so is there a way in which we can essentially push it over to the following meeting after this one? That's what I had asked.
That's fine. And
For the record.
I think it's a good question that everybody on council.
I think what the-
and I guess I'll let you answer.
Still, the early part of this week, I would have answered that question that you'd have to run a new notice for the 15 days. But there was an opinion came out of the Georgia Supreme Court. You see that, Randy, that opinion that came out? And it seemed to indicate that my answer should be, yes, you can do that, and no, you do not have to run another notice.
Yeah, council would probably specifically have to specify the date here that it would be with my plan.
So it would be like we would be calling a special called meeting for the planning commission.
Well, they actually have a date on the calendar for next Tuesday, but no, we don't have an agenda for next Tuesday. We had no cases for next Tuesday. So that would be the regular meeting. We wouldn't have been able to, we would have advertised based on the case law that David, Mr. Archer mentioned. It could go to next Tuesday.
And what that case did is say that, well, let me not go through all that. What that case did makes my opinion be that yes, you could delay this until the next city council meeting without running a new 15-day notice. And you agree with that, Randy? Yeah, I'd have answered that 2 weeks ago in the meeting. I would have answered that.
So,
Well, let me add, I just want to ask.
if I may, I'll give you as much time as you want after, but there's a couple things I want council to consider, just as the big picture as you're looking to make a decision tonight. There's two things I want to point out. Number one, I think Ms. Hodge is correct in saying there is an awful lot of new information, and you're tasked to make good decisions on behalf of the city, and sometimes those decisions do take a little bit of time. So, and I see we're trying to carve out some time to meet deadlines and whatnot, but just remember that, again, sometimes if we're time compressed and just seeing things, you need to consider that. And the second thing is, relative to the Planning Commission, while they do make a recommendation to the council, and while we do value that recommendation, it is exactly that, it's a recommendation. So you have the same information that the planning commission does have or would have. And so I guess my point would be, if it went back through the planning commission and they either approved it or didn't approve it, it doesn't necessarily follow that some of the concerns that you have would be changed simply based on whatever they recommended, so.
No,
Mr.
but it would give us time to digest the information.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
under the circumstances, we've had it in our hands 5 minutes. I mean, literally, we walked in the door and got it in our, I just don't think I've had time to review it, and I would prefer a little bit of an opinion and time to look.
Okay, well, we've had a motion and a second. Mr. Stepp, you wanted the floor and you got it.
My whole point is, it's what's gonna be zoned and what's gonna be used for that property. As far as how it's funded, that's not our issue. That's not our problem. If you can't get the project done in our timelines, or if you have to reapply, whatever it may be, that's mainly on you guys, it's not on us. I mean, we have to make sure that we protect our community to the best of our ability. So, I mean, that was where I got a little bit confused. It's like, hey, if we don't get this done by this time, the project goes away.
Well, the funding cycles go annually. I mean, there's a chance, I don't think I'm misspeaking, Randy or somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, the deadline for this year, I believe, Mr. Hammond said is May 24th.
Yeah.
And if that deadline's missed, you know, there'd be another application possibility to be up next year. Now, how that's attractive or unattractive based on what DCA does in our community, if anything, over the next 12 months, you know, we can't really look at that. And quite honestly, I don't know that that's something that we need to consider as part of the decision-making process. So,
Could I get one clarification?
please do.
Typically, we get planning commission information to them well in advance for them to have time to read it and digest it before their public meeting. And if we go through this route, we'll be getting them that information just like y'all got it about the last minute. Because by the time we put it together, kind of mailed to them. Their meeting's Tuesday.
Okay.
Typically, we would have put it
Okay.
off.
I mean, can't you
What-
literally just get this to them? I mean, y'all drop off our packet on our front step.
We can.
But then would have to be a first and second reading, Ken?
Yeah, that was my question. Do we have to go through if it goes back to planning commission, would it be the second reading or the first when it comes to?
No,
It'd be the first reading and it comes back to us?
no.
It'd be you could have the
You
second,
could-
based
you
on
could
that
do the
ruling that
second-
you said.
You could do the second reading as amended.
Okay.
So meaning the so after the planning commission meets and it comes back to us our next meeting, I guess,
In
Yeah.
2 weeks.
that would still be the second reading, which the process would not start over.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my
May
question.
18th.
May-
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's within the time constraints that you
Randy.
guys are facing, correct?
Randy, you agree with that?
I read the same court ruling, that you did. It appeared that once it's been advertised and had the initial public hearing,
It changes everything. I mean, that opinion changes
now it does
everything.
cut out the public a little because getting
Yeah.
that notice out and changing.
Yeah, that opinion says you can, A, send it back to the planning commission. The planning commission can consider it on Tuesday. And then B, it can come back before you in 2 weeks as a second reading.
Well, then I
Well,
would
you're
like.
saying in 2 weeks, I mean, that's only gonna be 2 days, isn't it? No,
amend
it'll be
to
less
make
than
sure
2
that it
weeks.
specifically
2 weeks
follows
from
that schedule.
tonight.
Well,
You're talking about 2 weeks, 2 weeks for the planning commission meeting,
No,
or 2
no,
weeks?
no, no, no.
Okay, you were just
The
referencing
next
our.
city council
I got you,
meeting
thank
will
you,
be in
Cal.
2 weeks.
I understand.
Well, then I'd also like to add an amendment to her
Well,
motion,
well-
which is that it follows that schedule.
Wait a minute now. First and third, it won't be 2 weeks, it'll be,
The 18th.
It'll be the 18th.
yeah,
This
okay.
is the first.
Okay, yeah. This is first.
So-
It's first Thursday, okay, yeah.
Could I ask a question, if we were to delay it, does that impact and make less possible the structure of this with the financing that's described here? Does that preclude us from
It's
following
my
through with
understanding,
application?
if we follow the schedule that Mr. Archer just laid out and that Mr. Wren just amended, we'll have to get Kerry to approve that amendment, but, that would fit the schedule that would fit a schedule that would work towards we'd meet the deadline.
So their deadline is.
That's correct. Ms. Hodger, you fine with the amendment that Mr. Wren put on that?
Is that how
follows
we do
schedule?
that? I remember a few years ago, if there's amendment, we have to vote as it is amended and then go back due to the That Robert Fool's team?
Do what?
If he amends her motion after we've had a first and second, we have to vote
Well, I'm just,
as he's amended.
Well, yeah.
right, you have to get,
Yeah,
I gotta get
okay,
a
I
second.
get, okay.
I've gotta get a second on.
All right, well, hold on a second, then let me back up a second. I'm not gonna attach your amendment to your second. So we've got a motion and a second to send it back to the planning commission. Depending on how council votes on that decision, I would allow for a second motion to be made relative to the schedule, which could then be seconded and be put up for vote.
Or the person that made the motion and the person that seconded the motion could withdraw it.
All right? Either way,
How
you
about
got.
you just go ahead with the first motion, and then I'll make another motion. to
All right,
add to
so
that
I've got a
follow-up
motion and a second, and the motion was to send the application with the changes to the planning commission. I've got Ms. Hodge with the motion, I got Mr. Wren with the second. All in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
All right, and that carries
I
unanimously.
make a motion to keep this, I guess, issue going back to the planning commission, that it follows the schedule that was laid out, identified by our city attorney, which is that it goes to the next planning commission meeting and then comes directly back to us for essentially a reread with the new conditions, as a second read, followed the 18th, on May 18th.
That'll work.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second to that? I got a motion, a second. Please raise your right hand and say aye if you are in favor.
Aye.
And that motion carries unanimously. So we will proceed from that point moving forward.
Well, that was fun.
That was something.
A little education.
We do have a first reading of an ordinance, an alcohol tax amendment to, well, Mr. Menino, if you'll get us started on the next item.
Thank you. Just for clarification, we are having a planning commission meeting next Tuesday as our regular scheduled meeting. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay, just making sure. This is a proposed text amendment to the alcohol ordinance. Cohutta Fishing Company, as represented by Mr. Watkins, had presented a proposed amendment that will allow retail outfitters to serve alcohol under certain circumstances. And with that, the Alcohol Control Board did recommend approval of the proposed changes to the ordinance. It's changes to the definition and the allowance for different types of companies to serve. And with that, they did recommend approval.
Okay. Any questions or discussion for Mr. Menino on this item? All right. Thank you, Randy. I'll give Mr. Watkins an opportunity to address council relative to this ordinance. Again, this is the first reading. We won't vote on it tonight. Just trying to get some information. Mr. Watkins.
Oh, God.
Careful.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Jeff Watkins here on behalf of the applicant, Cohutta Fishing Company. With me tonight is Andy Bowen, the owner of Cohutta. He'll be happy to answer any questions and also rescue me when or if I get in trouble tonight. As Mr. Menino indicated, we are seeking a text amendment to the alcohol ordinance to allow a retail establishment like Andy's, Cohutta Fishing Company, that sells outdoor clothing, recreation equipment, and provides fly fishing guiding services to serve beer and wine, just beer and wine, during store hours. Regular store hours, normal store hours are 10 in the morning until 6 at night. When I drafted this proposed amendment, I used the new Kroger, kind of have a guide. But I would argue that this amendment would be much less of a safety and health concern. Unlike Kroger, the retail establishment is only open again till 6. I think Kroger, they serve beer and wine until 10. It'd be much less taps. I think he wants to start with a couple of taps and maybe bring some, kind of gradually bring wine in, maybe 1 or 2 taps of the wine. But more compelling is the fact that this concept, by allowing this without serving food, has been going on in Cartersville for quite some time at the cigar bar. Again, the health and safety concerns that some folks may have are just not present. This is narrowly tailored, narrowly construed, and very importantly, it will help retail businesses like Andy's to thrive in downtown Cartersville. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a fact that with the internet age that we have right now, retail establishments, clothing establishments especially, are dying on the vine. Unless they can be authentic, they can provide a specialized service above and beyond just buying a jacket. As an example, you go in Cohutta, you buy a Patagonia jacket. Let's face it, it's cheaper and quicker to do it on the internet. So what's going to make someone go into Cohutta here in downtown Cartersville? Well, it's the experience. This is just one more service that would be allowed at Cohutta. You go in there, you've got charismatic salespeople that can show you how to tie a fly. They can explain to you, go out in the parking lot and do some casting. Watch fishing videos. Well, again, this is just one more thing that the customer would be allowed to do, and that's to have a glass of wine, a beer. And I would also like to point out some pictures for those of you who have never been into Andy's store. I would encourage you to do. I mean, it's a gem. I mean, I quite frankly, even if you don't fly fish, it's really special for Cartersville to have a place like this.
Jeff, if you would've got those to us earlier, we could have put them up on the picture.
Yeah. Well, that would have been too easy. And each person won't be able to just look at these and see them like this.
Thank you.
What you have in front of you is the current location of Cohutta. The inside gives you an example of the whole location. Inside, not a complete picture, but sort of where this would be. It'd be off to the left-hand corner of where inside the shop. The last two pictures is what I wanted. I'm sorry?
No, go ahead and finish your thought.
The last two pictures are an example of this concept in Dallas, Texas. And it's a fly shop. Quite frankly, in Andy's travels around the U.S., there's several states, not in Georgia yet, but there are several states that have fly shops like this that offer that. And that's an example of a fly shop, Tailwater's fly shop in Dallas, Texas, that shows you how the inside of the store would look and how the beer and wine would be served. The other thing I'd like to point out is, as you're probably familiar with downtown Woodstock and other places in metro Atlanta, retail establishments are allowed to give away beer and wine, but here you would actually have to pay for it, which to me gives a more compelling reason to allow it, just because, again, I think it's less of a safety and health concern. But I would be happy to answer any questions and reserve any further time I have for rebuttal if necessary.
Couple points of clarification, please, Mr. Watkins. And again, you used the cigar bar as an example. I'd also probably point out the Kroger, even though they are selling food, certainly not in a restaurant type setting for the most part. But would the area of the store be sectioned off similar to what the Kroger facility has?
That's correct. Yeah, you have an actual area of where the beer and wine would be served.
And one of the things that I know you and I have discussed this, I just want to make it clear for the record that while there are in the ordinance that the text amendment changed, this establishment would pay the same fees as a restaurant would for an alcohol license. They would also be under the same restrictions as far as purchasing through a distributor, having the employees trained, and wearing the proper identification tags as any restaurant was. So they're not getting any special treatment or getting any reduced cost in what some might say is competing with a restaurant.
Absolutely, absolutely. He's got there's criminal and civil penalties if he doesn't run it correctly pursuant to local state law. Has to have liability insurance, and also it's all the fees and permits that those that serve beer and wine already have to pay. He'll be having to do that. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Watkins at this time? Thank you, sir. All right, any other discussion about this item before we move forward? Again, this is a first reading. We'll take this up for final consideration at our next meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, Andy, yes, please step forward again, name and address for our clerk, please, just kind of.
Yes, thanks. I'm Andy Bowen, owner of Cutter Fishing Company. Thanks for listening, Mayor, Council. To add to what Jeff was saying is basically, not just the examples he showed you guys there, but, even beyond that, I mean, if you go back and look at some, I did a lot of research on this before I even thought of this idea. Urban Outfitters, big, they're in Chicago, New York, or whatever, they've done this. Nordstrom has done this. So it's not like a new concept. May sound like a new concept, but I think the thing of it is, I want to just kind of reiterate is the fact that, from 10 to 6, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., we're not really going to be a bar, obviously. Nor are we going to affect any other sales of any other bars in the afternoon or what have you. People aren't coming will not be coming to our establishment to drink beer like a bar or a restaurant. It would be just like if we have clients after a guide trip, at the end of the day, if they want to just have a beer and just kind of be a little bit more relaxed, in that environment, then they could go anywhere else in town to have dinner, drink beer, what have you, have a drink. But that's just one thing I wanted to reiterate as to what the purpose is. And I think the main thing is that the selling the experience. I mean, we can't underrate that. I mean, I really do believe in, everybody, small retail establishments have faced with the internet, with Amazon Prime and clicking a button and 2 days later it's on your front door. I'm trying to find a way to be more authentic and create an experience, not just a place to go buy goods, but a lot of people that come to our shop already, it is very much a relationship style of doing business with us. We've created a really good loyal following of people and kind of a community of people that like this, kind of like the old country store concept back in the day when you could go sit down and have a cup of coffee and all the farmers would meet or talk or whatever. That's the kind of relationship and community we're trying to build with our shop. And so I think we already have the coffee part done and the stories and all that. We already got that part taken care of in a good fashion, but I think this would just add a nice bonus to what we're currently offering. So thanks for listening.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion? Moving along, second reading of ordinance, Mr. Porta, if you'll handle this for the amending the festival zone.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is the second reading, as you suggested to us, from DDA Manager Lily Reed. She's talked to you about this before, amending the ordinance for the festival zone, allowing for signage to be placed rather than fencing around the property. It allows it easier for the volunteers that work for the DDA. There's been no changes since the first reading. I recommend this for your approval.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion on this item? And if there are none, a motion would be in order.
Motion to approve. Second.
Carrie's got one of the, your first time out of the gun, you're gonna we'll have to check your work there, Sam. We got a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Bob, you've got the next four, please, sir. Start with that.
Good evening, everyone. I think first up we have our second reading of the car wash ordinance. There have been no changes since the first reading. Just to hit the high points, it still requires a 50% recycle rate and will require compliance for any facility built after the 1st of June.
Okay. Any discussion or questions for Bob on this?
Me, just one question. We've got a new car wash going on West Avenue.
Right.
And that was already set up to be the 50% recycle, and all the future ones are already set up like that. Is that right, Bob?
From what I understand, when you buy a new tunnel car wash that you want to install somewhere, these recycle capabilities are built into the standard equipment. In years past, apparently it was an adder that you had to purchase, and maybe if it made a good financial or business case to do that, you would. But now it's pretty much standard equipment, so it shouldn't put a burden that we know of on anyone doing this. They would simply have to turn a knob and they would comply.
And this is another in a list of items that come from the North Georgia Water Planning District that they'll tie Bob's permits to if we don't go through the checklist and deny them, so.
So these aren't things that we're just doing
It's
as a
a
city, this
state
is something that's getting mandated to
No,
state.
we didn't wake up one day and decide we needed to do this.
Yeah, I don't think you got a lot of choice.
Thank you. All right, if there's no other discussion, the motion's in order.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Continue on, Bob.
The West Avenue water line replacement, this is a project that we initially took a look at back in 2012, actually went through the design process to a point of advanced completion, maybe 80%, something like that. And the project was shelved due to lack of funding for construction. We feel like it's a good project for us to dust off and try again. Southland Engineering did the original design work. We'd like to retain them again, make use of the previous work. They've given us a price of $37,400 to rework that design. There are a few additions that are going to be made out on the Plymouth Drive end of the project, and would recommend that for your approval.
Okay. Questions, comments, or motions?
And this runs from Etowah to,
Etowah
Plymouth.
essentially to Plymouth Drive.
just think about it, that when we get this designed, this is gonna be a difficult project, so you might prepare yourself for it.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Continue, Bob.
You may or may not recall authorizing a roof repair at the water treatment plant in mid-March meeting. That repair has been completed, but we ran into a slight imperfection in our roof there. Essentially, this is a concrete roof deck, and it was finished or formed in such a way that the roof is a bowl and holds water. So when they tore the roof off, they figured out that this was a problem. Essentially what happened was they had to order a specialized ISO board, the foundation for the roof, to accommodate for the imperfection and create the pitch that we needed to make the roof function correctly. That was an additional cost of $5,425.
Okay.
It's got a slope.
Does now.
Good thing Greg didn't want to add that as another pool for the recreation department.
Yeah, shallow pool.
That's right. Any questions, or if not, a motion's in order?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Please continue, Bob.
Last up, some of you have been out to the wastewater plant recently, and I don't know, how much you paid attention to things out there, but we have had a growing issue out there for a while, and it's something remarkably simple, but it's doors. The place is full of them, and most of the doors out there are original to the date of construction of the building that they're on. The earliest ones would date back to the mid-'80s. As you can imagine, being in a wet environment, an environment with corrosive chemicals and all the things that go on out there, and being open and closed numerous times a day, they are showing their age. We took bids to replace all the defective doors in the plant. The low bid came from Robinson Door and Security, and they quoted us a price of $23,674. That will allow us to repair all of the defective doors. It'll allow us to secure the buildings and to just have functional entryways into a lot of our critical buildings out there. I recommend them for your approval.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments, or motions?
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. Sanders, the next two.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Solid Waste needs to purchase 400 recycling carts from Otto for $14,300. And we also need 400 refuse carts from Toter for $19,510.88. And both of these companies are honoring previously bid price from the last time we purchased.
Okay. Any discussion on this item? Ooh, picture there's a garbage can. Look at that. Ooh.
Yeah, that's the Toter, that's the,
It looks nicer than mine.
I was gonna say. I need a 2018 model. Questions, comments, or motions?
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
thank you. The next thing we need is some more dumpsters. We would like to purchase 18, 8 cubic yard dumpsters. An 8 cubic yard is the standard large dumpster. That's an 8 cubic yard dumpster. And we would like to purchase those from Baker Waste Equipment for $15,768. Baker was not the low bid, but we think they're the best bid because of some extra features that this dumpster has that the low bidder doesn't have.
Are these for, because of increased business, or is it
Yes.
replacing existing?
A little bit of both, but mostly because we are, our commercial customers, we are increasing the number of those. So as new businesses open and choose our service, we,
Okay, thank
So
you.
is this the size that we were talking about this morning?
yes.
Okay.
This is typical for, you know, your normal volume store, convenience store, restaurant, or
Gotcha.
That's the rest of
Thank you. All right, any discussion? If not, a motion is in order.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Tommy. Mr. Riggs, you got the next item.
Yes, Mayor, it's time for us to purchase some odorant and fill our tanks up at our 2 stations. And we're asking to allow us to purchase up to 700 gallons at a cost of $17,780.
Okay. Questions, comments, or motions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Council, this is the purchase, we solicited bids for an infield groomer and received 3 quotes back. We currently have a Toro model. It's been a very good machine, but our staff went to the East Cobb Athletic Complex and demoed this machine right here, and this is a machine that we would like to recommend. It's used quite extensively, and this is a budgeted item. This is one of our staff members demoing this unit. So, anyway, I would recommend approval of the low bid in the amount of $17,255 from ABI.
Okay.
They got a dealer around here?
No.
You got a deal with folks in Indiana?
We do. We got a go-between though. We thought we'd send you up there.
Baseball?
I thought you'd learn how to use that. That was kind of stress relief.
It is stress relief.
Good, I'll come out there and learn. I'll
Good.
get me on it.
All right, Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Is there any other business that needs to come before council this evening? Nobody's got that look in their eye. I will just say, go ahead, Diane.
May I just wanted to mention, we're all used to Roselawn Market in the fall, and of course, this weekend is called May Market at Roselawn. So we'll have a lot of people in town for 2 days, and I hope we'll be hospitable.
The only other thing I'll say is Ms. Tate puts an awful lot of time into the Georgia Municipal Association Legislative Policy Committee, and they're going to be, that group, actually a large group from Georgia Municipal Associations, for people from cities all over the state are going to be in town next week. The chair of the state gets to decide where the meeting is, and Boyd Austin, our friend, the mayor in the city of Dallas, certainly could have had it in his backyard, but decided to have it up here. And so I just wanted to publicly thank him for entrusting our community and bringing a pretty prestigious event to our town, and I know you'll represent us well and have a good time. So, I know. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned, calmer than you are.